Hi everyone. So welcome to history class. If you're watching this video, then you have made it to the end of unit 11. Whew, it has been a long unit. So what I'm doing today here is I'm combining the last two lessons together into one recording. So we're covering lesson 12 and 13, which includes chapter 53, 54, and 55 in your book. And that sounds like a lot, but it's really not that much. There's just, a little bit more reading for you to do, but you'll have some extra days to get it all completed. All right, so what we're going to focus on today is the year of 1968. A lot of stuff happened in that year. We have Lyndon Johnson deciding not to run for a second term as president. We have a new politician in the picture here, and we're going to learn about him, Robert Kennedy. And we're going to talk about how Martin Luther King sort of changed what he was doing, and then how he died. And we're going to talk about how the change as a result of the civil rights movement happened throughout the country, and a bunch of other stuff going on during the year of 1968. So there's a lot going on. So just to kind of summarize about the year of 1968, it was a busy year. There's a lot of social unrest happening. We're going to talk about what that means. A lot of violence happening in our country too, and a few tragedies. As we've been talking about all along through this unit, the Vietnam War is still going on. It's kind of just going on forever, and not a lot's happening to show any progress in the war. So as a result, there's a lot of protesting across the United States going on against the war. A lot of people aren't supporting this war. And another issue that's starting to come to light here is the idea of poverty in the American city, something that really hasn't been paid attention to before. So what happens is Martin Luther King, with the success that he had in the civil rights movement in the South, he decides to change his focus a little bit to helping these people in the urban areas and these people that are suffering from poverty. And he brings his idea of peaceful protesting all across the United States, working with President Johnson to try to improve things. But sort of behind the things, there's a lot of people who are not supporting Martin Luther King. They don't like what he's doing. They think there's a better way. A lot of different groups who decide that they aren't going to wait for peaceful protests to fix their problems, and we're going to see what happens as a result. Okay, so the first major event in 1968 is March 31st. President Johnson goes on live television to give a speech, and he decides to tell the country that he is not going to run for a second term as president. So remember, he took office when Kennedy was killed, and so what happens is he finished Kennedy's term, and then he was reelected. But he is still able to get reelected for a second term of his own. But he decides not to. And so why do you think that he wouldn't want to run for reelection? Think about that for a minute. Okay, well, the main reason he decides not to run for reelection is because of the war in Vietnam. He's been dealing with this problem throughout his entire presidency. It wasn't his fight. He took it over from Kennedy, and it's caused him all kinds of heartache. He doesn't know how to fix it. He's tired of dealing with it. So I think this is the main reason why he decides not to run for re-election. So prior to that, we find a new politician coming onto the scene, and he has great popularity in the United States. This is Robert Kennedy. He is JFK's brother. And when John Kennedy was president, he was appointed the United States Attorney General, which is a big job. That's like the big lawmaker, the big law enforcer in the whole country is the Attorney General. After that, he became a senator for the state of New York. And a lot of the areas that he focused on in his work were civil rights for African Americans, and he also fought organized crime in the cities. So he worked closely with people like Martin Luther King and Cesar Chavez on these civil rights projects. And he was really committed to helping people who were in poverty, and he was very much opposed to the Vietnam War. So prior to Johnson announcing that he wasn't going to get reelected, Kennedy here decides he's going to run against Lyndon Johnson, which a lot of people told him was sort of a waste of time because, excuse me, usually the sitting president always gets reelected. But nonetheless, he's going to run for reelection. Okay, I mean, he's going to run against Johnson anyway. But then, of course, Johnson makes that announcement. So a lot of people feel now that Kennedy has an easy shot at the White House. So in April then of 1968, big event happening. Martin Luther King, he's in Washington, D.C., working on an event that's going to happen there called the Poor People's Campaign. And at the same time, he hears about this worker strike going on in Memphis, Tennessee for the garbage collectors. They are fighting for better pay and better work, and they decide to go on strike. So Martin Luther King hears about this, and he decides he's going to go to Memphis to support those people because he thinks this is some place that he can have an impact. And he organizes a peaceful protest in Memphis. But unfortunately what happens is violence breaks out and this huge riot happens. And people in the city of Memphis are going crazy. They're destroying the city, burning stuff down. All these businesses were destroyed. 60 people were injured, and a 16-year-old boy was killed by a police gunman. Martin Luther King is devastated because this is the first time he was been involved in a protest that caused someone to be killed, and he's very, very upset. But he decides to continue on with his plan in Memphis. Excuse me. So he goes the next couple of days. He's working on this this garbage worker strike, and he gets a crowd of people come to this church, and he gives a speech in response to the riot that happened in Memphis. And this is a famous speech that he gives. It's called the Mountaintop Speech. And the first video that's going to come up for you is a little clip of the speech that I want you to watch. So go ahead and do that. Pause the recording. After you watch that first video, come on back. Okay, so you saw a little bit of the speech, and you can see like how emotional he is and how moving that speech is. So he returns to his motel that evening, and he's meeting with some of his partners, and he goes out on the balcony of his motel to get some fresh air, and he is shot and killed. And at that point, they don't know who shot him, but he dies in Memphis on April 4th. So when Robert Kennedy gets news of this, he is very heartbroken because he was very close to Martin Luther King. And so he announces Martin Luther King's death at a political rally that he's at. And I want you to watch the clip of the video of him announcing the death of Martin Luther King. So go ahead and watch that and then come on back. Right, so after Martin Luther King is assassinated, riots are breaking out all over the United States in over 100 cities. People are devastated by his loss. They are angry, and they don't know what's going to happen now, and people just get out of control. People are injured all over the country, and numerous people are killed, and cities are destroyed. People are saying this is not what Martin Luther King stood for. He would not have wanted this kind of behavior after his death. So as a result of this confusion and anger that's breaking out across the country in our cities, Black power groups start to form in cities. And these leaders are encouraging people to continue the violence because they think that their way is better. This is the way to get attention, they feel. So this kind of continues on over the next few years, actually, where these Black groups start to form all over the country. And actually, more and more people now begin to explore their Black heritage, and they kind of grow their own leaders in different communities across the United States. Okay, so moving on to June of 1968, Robert Kennedy is winning primaries in all the states to get the nomination for president. He wins the big ones. He wins California, and he becomes the front runner in the election. So he's in California giving a speech on June 5th in this hotel. And you know how politicians, they go from one political rally to the next. They're so busy when they're running for president. So he has to leave this this rally he's at and get to another press conference. So he decides to run through the hotel kitchen to get to his car instead of going out through the main area. Because, you know, if he goes out through the main door, people want to shake his hand and talk to him, and he's in a hurry. So he goes through the kitchen, and a guy in the kitchen pulls a gun and shoots him, and he's killed. So we have a little video clip about this. I want you to go ahead and watch that and then come on back. All right, so another tragedy, another death. So many tragedies happening during this time in the United States. So something that's said about Robert Kennedy is that he was born the son of wealth. He died a champion of outcasts of the world in terms of his background and goals. What does this mean? What do you think it means that he died a champion of outcasts? Think about that for a minute. So I think it means, although he was a wealthy man, born into a wealthy family, he really was an advocate for people who were lost, people who were poor, and people who needed help. And his death is a real tragedy because of this. All right, so I grabbed this out of your book. This is just a little clip of some major events in the year 1968. So if you can read through that just to get an idea of everything that's going on. So many things happening that we don't have time to talk about here. Okay, so for the rest of today, what you're going to do is you're going to read chapters 53, 54, and 55, get the study guide questions for all of those chapters and do those, and make sure you complete your graded assignment 11-13. And then I want you to go back through, after you finish 11-13, I want you to go back through all the previous graded assignments and make sure that you have completed them. Check your grade book. If there's anything you missed, you can make it up. Go ahead and take care of that right away. Coming soon, we will talk about our quarter 4 project coming up in about a week or so. So that is it for all. I will see you all next time.